What's up, everyone, and welcome into a special edition of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with the TV voice of the Colorado Mammoth and PM host of the Altitude Sports Radio Show, Andy Lindahl. Andy, thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
I'm great. I'm doing great. It's two games losses in a row for the Bandits, but it's not end of the world for us, but it's end of the world for some Bandits fans out there.
Okay. All right. There's a lot. Don't you trust past success? Doesn't that give everybody a little bit of a calm? No.
You would have thought so, but it's like it's the end of the world here with two losses in a row and each one being a one goal loss. I don't understand it, never have, but it's where we are right now.
Well, then we got two desperate teams getting ready to play Saturday, don't we?
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm interested in that game as a whole, and that's why we got you on. So, my first question, and the first question I ask in every interview is, what is one word to describe the Mammoth season with 3 games to go?
One word is tough. I would say Jekyll and Hyde, so maybe schizophrenic would be the one word. Um, they had a lot of good stuff going on when they had Zed Williams healthy, Connor Kelly healthy. Eli McLaughlin had to step away from the team for personal reasons, for career reasons. Not sure it's out there or not. You can probably find it on the internet. I'll just err on the side of caution and not say exactly what. But bottom line is that's 3 of your scorers. They had finally put together a well-balanced offense with McLaughlin and Will Malcolm and Connor Robinson on the left side, and Thomas Vella's chipped into. That was a pretty exciting offense. And then you had Ryan Lee was finally back. He had a knee injury. Like the Ryan Lee's last somewhat healthy games prior to this year came against you guys in that final series that Buffalo won after the Mammoth had won. He fought through an injury, was very gutty, and then ultimately, he had to sit out last year because of it. So they finally had things cooking. Connor Kelly was really getting a good rhythm going with him. And, Ryan Lee, of course, had a great chemistry, had a great working relationship with Zed Williams, and then Zed blew his Achilles. Unfortunately, you could just see it. It was one of those things where I still remember the play, and I cover a lot of football here in town. I worked on the Broncos broadcast for double-digit years, was there for the last couple Super Bowls that they went to. And unfortunately, you just learn to kind of pick out what things are, knee injuries. And he went down, no contact, grabbed his ankle immediately. I knew it wasn't going to be good. It ultimately hasn't been good. And they've just been kind of trying to figure it out ever since. Tyson Gibson stepped in Zed's place as the kind of physical forward that you're using. But things were going really well. And then, they weren't because of the injuries. And now they had a bye week and 3 straight road trips. We haven't seen them in a month. It's been an interesting last month of the Mammoth life.
Yeah, I think you summed that up pretty perfectly. And, we'll start with the offense here. We kind of already went into it a little bit. But before the season even began, one of my bold predictions coming into the season was I had Colorado was going to lead the league in scoring. And for a bit there, I was feeling pretty good about it. But then you already mentioned it, the loss of Zed Williams, the injury. Eli McLaughlin's on the holdout list for work. You had Tyson Gibson missing the beginning part of the season. Now Connor Kelly has been missing the last few. I know he was questionable last week. I'm actually, as a NLL fan, I'm hoping to see him in the game on Saturday. But they're sitting in the league right now at eighth overall in scoring. What is the vibe around this offense with just so many key pieces missing?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, it's a little tough for me because we haven't seen him in a month, right? Since Connor Kelly, Connor Kelly was available last time. We saw these guys in the building. TJ Camizio was not a part of the team. I got a chance to talk with him on a podcast last week. So yeah, there's been a lot of changes. I can just tell you, watching the guys playing, calling their games since we got back from the COVID break, it's a little bit going back, and you guys will know this well in Buffalo from the 2 years that we faced off against each other in the championships. But the Mammoth's offense has always been a little bit hit or miss. It's certainly not like they're the opposite of the Bandits. The Mammoth live off their defense and the goaltending of Dylan Ward. And obviously Matt Vince, you can live off the goaltending of Matt Vince. That's no comment on Vince. But you guys have this incredible offense and this array of forwards that we'd all love to have options. Half your guys would probably be number one options on most of the team in the league, right? And you're lucky to have 3 or 4 of them. So the Mammoth have done it off defense, but as you'd said, this year it's a younger defensive core. Robert Hope's getting a little bit older. Dylan Ward, I was talking to Teddy Jenner a few weeks ago, and Teddy doesn't think Dylan's quite the same goalie that'll shut it down the way he was a couple of years ago. And, look, everybody gets older. Father Time's never lost a battle. Now, we've seen Dylan at points in this year. He's shut it down when he's needed to. It led to a big comeback win against Halifax, I want to say, earlier in the year. But the offense was cruising. Coach Bishop finally got things going the way that he wanted to, and it was a lot of back and forth motion. Like I'd said, there was balance on the left and the right side. And now I feel like if you watched this game this past weekend, I'm not sure Buffalo fans have had a chance, but they scored 12 goals. 6 of them came from a sock trick from Ryan Lee. And Tyson Gibson is trying to get his groove back. He was good in the game last week against Sass, but I think they're trying to redefine their identity right now because they had all these options and now they don't.
Yeah, so that kind of translates into the next one, and I feel like it's been mentioned multiple times this season so far. But if there was ever a year to have a down year and be towards the bottom of the standings, it would have been last year, and that's due to Panther City folding in the dispersal draft, and it allowed Will Malcolm, like you just mentioned, to return to Buffalo or to return to Colorado where it all began. And young lefties don't just become available, let alone for free, very often. So how has his transition into this offense really been so far this season?
It's been good at points. He had, God, what did he have? The 6 or 7 goal game about a month ago where he just looked unstoppable, and he's so quick. He's got a great first step. I've compared him on the broadcast at times to Allen Iverson, for those that go back far enough to remember his quickness in that point guard mode where he would just give you a little shake
At
and then he'd be
crossover.
around guys. Yeah, that killer crossover. And, so he's shaking guys. His shot just quite hasn't been dialed in, I think, to where he wants it. Because there's games where it's going and there's other games where it isn't going. And he and Connor Robinson haven't played a lot together. Connor and Eli were like peanut butter and jelly. They were so good playing off each other. And Connor's still got the big shot from the outside. It's still something you got to respect. I was a little surprised. I was a little surprised he didn't sneak a couple past Chiliano this past weekend because he's always had a good, that outside shot's always been pretty effective against Chiliano back when he was with the Seals. So Will's been good. We're all excited about Will. I don't want to say that, but it's definitely, I think, been a year of trying to get everything together and, a year of growth. It's what happens when new teammates come together.
So a guy who, and you kind of mentioned him as a nice teaser here, has rebounded nicely from a bit of a down season last year is Connor Robinson. And he's already eclipsed the 2023-24 numbers that he had, and he's shooting at a higher clip than even last year. How important has his game been, especially stepping up into a bigger role in this offense with so many other pieces that have gone down so far?
Well, he's vital. He knows he's vital. He fought through some injury last year. I do think what I always feel bad for these guys in this league about is I don't think everybody always knows when they're fighting through something, right? There's very much the hockey culture of don't tell going on, which is fine. You don't want penny if you got a bad hand or a bad wrist or bad arm or bad whatever. You don't want a defender, coming out there and trying to see can you really play through this or not and whack on it a little extra or whatever. But we also ultimately don't find out sometimes there are injury reasons that lead to some of the number changes that we don't see or we don't hear about. Connor's vital. Ryan Lee's vital. Down the stretch, if they're going to do anything in playoffs, those two guys absolutely have to show up because Connor, without Eli, Connor was already a leader. Without Eli, it's just magnified that much. And Lee's doing the same thing without Zed. But the thing that's wild about it is, a year ago, it almost would have been better if the righties all got hurt or the lefties all got hurt, not maybe plucking one from each side because, Lee and Zed had the chemistry. And I think Lee and Connor will get the chemistry. Connor Kelly and Zed had chemistry. Zed knew his job. Zed was our most physical forward. He would go in there. He would knock guys around. He would create space for shooters. Eli was doing a lot of that. There was one point Connor scored a goal earlier in the year, I want to say back in January, where Eli looked like a football fullback running through the hole and taking on 2 defenders and literally had a guy on each shoulder holding them back to give Connor the space. Will Malcolm's not really that kind of guy that I've seen yet. Maybe he's got it in his game and he'll start showing it more. But the wrecking ball guy at times has more been Eli McLaughlin. And so Connor's probably with Connor's a little, Connor feels like from the booth view, he looks like a little bit bigger player than what Will Malcolm is as far as thickness, muscle, whatever you want to call it. Connor's got the sturdier body to throw around some of these checks, and I think Will's going to have. So Connor's probably going to have to do that. But in an ideal situation, Connor's hanging out up top and he's sniping corners. So Connor's going to be very vital. But again, he's just been thrown into this situation where he's playing with a lot of new guys. So
Yeah, and each guy has to kind of take up some of the slack from the players that have not been in the lineup. And I'm already at question 5, and I know you mentioned his name, but I haven't even mentioned his name yet. And one of the biggest stories of the Mammoth season is Ryan Lee is back to doing Ryan Lee things, including the sock trick he just had versus Saskatchewan this last weekend. And I still recall earlier in the season when he had that penalty shot and it went in and the smile on his face and all the bench just erupts, and it kind of just set the tone for it. But my question is, has he gotten his game back to what it was pre-injury, or do you think he still has another gear yet to go to be able to reach that?
yeah, I'm happy with. I think he's back to normal now. There could be another gear, but I'll tell you what. Those knee injuries are tricky. You know how physical this game is. He's been diving fearlessly across the crease. He's been taking the beating that comes along with that because goalies and defensemen don't like guys getting in the crease, whether it's allowed or not. So he always takes one extra shot, it seems, whenever he does it. But that's his signature move. They call him Flying Ryan for a reason. But to me, he looks like the same old player. And quite honestly, age and that kind of knee injury. And I know, like I said, during the repeat year when they went for the repeat, I know the knee was on and off bugging him too. So I'm real impressed with where he's been able to go. I'm not saying he's an old man. He's not by any stretch, but I don't know. I mean, he is, if you're looking for guys to pick things up and find another level, he's down the list, right? He's probably number 5 or 6 if you were asking that. He's doing everything they need him to do. They just need to get some consistency going with their goal scoring again. And I don't know, he and Kelly need time together. Ryan, they traded for Connor Kelly last year when they figured out Ryan wasn't going to be able to play. And so he and Kelly really haven't played too much together. But it all works out. And Kelly, like I talked about on the left side, Kelly can bring the physical nature. Kelly can go and will set some picks, but Kelly's a lot like Connor Robinson, where you would rather he hang out up top and someone else do the dirty work. But I'm hoping they'll get it figured out here.
So last one I got for you in terms of the offense, and we've already mentioned all the pieces out the front gate that are missing, but that means players have to kind of step up. Who do you think is someone or even multiple someones who have stepped up their game to kind of lessen the blow of the vacated offensive production that's there?
The kid and I don't mean any disrespect. The league gets mad at me when I say kid, but I'm a 50-year-old guy, so they're all kids to me. So that's just part of what we deal with here, right? The guy that's impressed me is Thomas Bella. I think Thomas Bella on the left side, number 17. He's wearing Chris Wardle's old number. Wardle's a guy that I think in a perfect world you probably wish was hanging around, but they tried to do Wardle the style last year, send him to the Seals so that he could go chase a title when we knew our season probably wasn't going to end up the way that we wanted it to. So Bella, I've liked Bella's game a lot. Gibson, they gave up a lot for Gibson, and Gibson's been an interesting story. Kind of been here, kind of hasn't. For a while we wondered, was work going to call him back east or whatever? You got to respect, these guys don't make enough to make a living off this thing. So when work calls or career or life calls, I always try to be respectful of it. I think Gibson can get going. I liked his game last weekend. When Gibson is engaged and gets one going early, you could see why he was so highly sought after. You could see why he was a number 1 overall pick. He's a big physical player. He's got a nice shot. But, they traded for him. And again, things were, he was here, he wasn't. It just has always been a little inconsistent, we'll say. If he can get consistent, he's probably the guy. Like, he has the body type to try to replace Zed, or at least give you 75% of Zed. I think a lot of Zed Williams. He's one of my favorite players in this league. I love the guy to death. He's a big sweetheart, but he looks out for his teammates. He plays a physical, mean game that I don't think a lot of guys like to sign up for. And frankly, it's tough. It's really tough to replace him. It just is. Um, but Gibson's got a shot to give you at least enough that you can make a run. The other one to watch out for right now is Ben McDonald. He's a young guy. They just got back into the fold. He played. I think he did get a goal. I think he got his first goal last week. I had to watch. I got to keep up with so many Denver sports. You know, we had Nuggets and Avs, and I got the Mammoth and all this stuff going on. The draft is happening. NCAA for this talk show that I can't remember. I feel like McDonald got his last week, but he's a guy to watch. He's a guy they're counting on. But we'll see. Like I said, this is, they just got off this 3-game roadie. Tough one in Ottawa. I think they wanted the one in Ottawa, but I wasn't until I saw the Ottawa game that was the middle portion of this thing, the one that was before Saskatchewan, that you remember. Oh yeah, the Riptide do have a few dudes. I know that the record isn't great, but their goalie's good, and Jeff Teet's amazing, right? So if you got that, you got a chance, and the Mammoth just couldn't shut. That was the win. I think the Mammoth are going to look back and wish they got if they don't end up getting into the playoffs. But it is what it is. So there's 3 guys that we're hoping will step up. Jalen Chaster's taking a few minutes here and there. Owen Ron, both Chaster and Ron do a little more transition than they do offense. But when they got their win over Philadelphia, both Chaster and Ron played roles in that. Although Ron's been on and off, the injury list. So yeah, they're just trying to figure it out. You know how it is. There's no free agency to go save you right now.
So, as we mentioned off the top, you are the PM host of Altitude Sports Radio, and I have to ask a non NLL question right here. How has it been up there lately with all the winning in the area? You had the Avalanche just win the Stanley Cup not that long ago. You had Denver Nuggets and Mammoth both win their championships. Even the Broncos right now are riding high from last year, and with the play of Bo Nix. So, has there been? It has to be a lot more fun there when the teams are successful and winning than prior years where they were down in the dumps and trying to find ways to get back to relevancy in their respective sports.
Yeah, so I will tell you this. Again, I'm an older guy, and I'm a Denver native. I've been lucky to have a media career without having to move around the country. It doesn't happen that way, so I'm very thankful for what I have. So it is cool to cover your childhood teams. It's also stressful. Yeah, I don't have to tell you, you guys out in Buffalo, I got a few guys, Mark Stout and Darren McKee, that used to work out there. They covered the great Bills teams of the 90s. They've told me about how it is. They said we're very similar as far as passion for football in these 2 cities. It was very cool. Like, a career dream come true is being on the field for Super Bowl 50 as their sideline reporter and, covering all the stuff after. Now, the reverse is it sucked being on the field for 48 when they got whooped by the Seahawks. But, it was very cool to see that. It was very cool to see the Manning years. As far as recent history, the Bo Nix thing is interesting because we're happy they have a quarterback to go with, but I think Buffalo showed there's one thing to make the playoffs in a spot that didn't exist 5 years ago. It's another thing to be, and we remember it here in Denver, because when you've got a guy like Josh Allen, or in our case, most recently, Peyton Manning, you're in the Final Four discussions every year, right? I still have a couple questions about Bo Nix. They did some good things, but now the league knows. Now the league's ready. They did really only have one successful offensive drive against you guys, and that was because of one nice play, right? It wasn't even a long, sustained drive. So I'm a little picky there. The Nuggets winning the NBA championship I never thought I'd see. So that was incredible for all of us because, I don't know, maybe you guys don't know, but I think you're close enough to enough professional basketball teams. NBA players didn't want to come to Denver. They weren't going to sign free agents here. We aren't going to put a super 3 together. Now, they ended up getting a big 3 or so together, but they drafted all the guys, and then they traded for Aaron Gordon. So to see the Nuggets win the championship, to be able to exist in the space of Joker after getting to grow up with John Elway is incredible. That Avs team, see, the Avs are the one team, as you go through, and you may know this, when you're in the media, you start to learn about, they pull the curtain back. You start to understand better. I've got friends that won't talk to me about the Broncos anymore because I'll give them reasons why. Just kind of, I mentioned with Bo Nix. I'll tell you why they didn't win. I'll tell you why your Super Bowl dreams are maybe still a little unrealistic right now. The Avs are the only team I don't have deep, even though they're on our station. I don't have deep connections in there because they're kind of a very secretive organization. So I don't have the curtain pulled back there. I root and bleed the Avs like I would if I were still just a fan, not involved in the media. So it has been a lot of fun. It's also been incredibly taxing and frustrating. The Val Nichushkin thing, he is an X factor. They absolutely have to have him. The shenanigans, and I'm not quite sure what's gone on. I'm not quite sure what's led to the player program stuff that he's been in, but to lose him in two straight playoffs and no coincidence, they don't get out of that round. We're hoping for good things this year. I think with the trades they made, I was disappointed Byram headed out your way because I like Bo Byram very, very much. I think you guys got the better end of that thing. But with the trades that they made this year, they are starting to look a little bit like the Cup team from a couple years ago. So we're enjoying the success. The cool thing is when the Avs won the Cup, the Mammoth won the Cup as well. They got to join in on the parade, so that was a lot of fun. But it's this weird it's this like this is what makes the Bandits so special. And I tell Bandit fans, don't take it for granted. We're in this weird, all right, we need another one. You don't want to be greedy, but when you've got the core that the Bandits have, one is not enough. Now you've got two in a row. I think a lot of people still think, I don't care a losing streak or not. Long season, they know what they need for the playoffs. I would be surprised if guys are maybe not quite as focused as they were, because that just happens in sports. But you got to enjoy it while you have it. And for both the Avs and the Nuggets to have Jokic and McKinnon and McCarr and Murray, you better get another one now. And so even though it's fun, there's a little bit of stress. Like the Nuggets season is weird. I'm not real sure they're long for the playoffs the way they're playing right now. And now the Avs I've got confidence in, but what? They've been Bennington twice, where, Jordan Bennington has just stood on his head since Four Nations break. And they just stole one from us Saturday that was ridiculous, because the Avs had about 9,000 prime chances they couldn't put home. So it's fun, but people are also, there's a pressure with coaching greatness. And again, that's why you got to give John Tavares a ton of credit out there, man. It's not easy. I know it seems easy to coach these super teams. It's not. It's not easy to keep the focus. It's not easy to maintain greatness. So you guys definitely have something very, very special. And if they were to win a third, I don't know, man. Might have to break them up. Might have to put in a law or something.
Yeah, we try to remind everybody to appreciate what you're watching, because it's not a normal thing. It doesn't come around all that much. But we'll flip to the defensive side of the ball. Eighth in the league with an 11.67 goals against average. Now, last year they were tied for 12th, 12.56 goals against. But besides the play of Dylan Ward, because we'll dive into him in just a second here, what changes do you think this team has kind of made that helped flip the script of what we saw last year happening on the back end?
It is funny because like last year, I don't know if I even processed how bad it was. They just had a few bad breaks. You know what I mean? Like this league, it's not like they were getting whooped every
Right.
game. Now, they weren't getting the stops we were used to, or maybe the key goals we were used to, and they got whooped by Saskatchewan. I'm telling you, I don't know what it is about going to Saskatchewan, but they just don't play well there. They really don't, because I remember the game right after the championship year. They just got smoked. Look, not having Ryan Lee last year hurt, so getting him back helped. Um, the defense, and I'm not, I know guys get sensitive in this league, so I want to make it very clear. I was told this by other players. The defense looks slow at times. That's just when I talk to some of my analysts, the rotations weren't there very quickly. I mean, this is a younger, faster league. The athletes are great. It doesn't matter what sport you're talking about. The next generation of athletes just seems to have one other thing the generation before them didn't have, right? I played lacrosse, and I didn't play indoor, I played field, but I watched some of the field guys. I'm like, God, it just feels like this was not the game that I loved and played growing up, because these guys are just so much more skilled, or so fast. They've worked on their shots. They've, just unreal. The creativity of both indoor and outdoor is amazing. So I respect today's athletes, but they were slow on defense. And you know, I know we're going to talk about some of their losses coming up here, as I've got a little of what you want to discuss in front of me in the outline. But, Paul Dawson, as you mentioned, Paul Dawson, much better fit there, because that's a team going for it. And I think Paul came into this thing and they wanted to lean on him. But I don't think, like Paul, I think had to play a bigger role than maybe they even expected, because the young guys, Owen Down, who's now playing really well for this team, it didn't start out as well as they thought. And I think probably, if I had to guess, Owen Down eventually would have been paired with a Paul Dawson. You would have had that veteran physical nastiness with the young guy that could maybe make up for the step that Paul's lost or whatever. And that's no disrespect to Paul. But Owen wasn't ready to be that guy. So then we got Hopi and Dawson out there quite often. And that's a lot of years, that's a lot of knowledge, but that isn't the quickest first step anymore with those two guys together. Another guy I think they would have loved to have paired with Paul Dawson and get some of his stuff to wear off on him would have been Brett Craig. But Brett Craig was hurt. Brett Craig wasn't right. Brett Craig was dealing with a knee injury that had caused him to miss a couple of years. Like Brett Craig is back to being Brett Craig now. But Brett Craig was at the beginning of the year, it wasn't working out with him. And then, the transition game, like Capito was nearing the end. And I love Joey so much. He's always going to be an ultimate mammoth. I've watched that guy make so many incredible plays in transition. But they didn't really have an answer for that. Jordan Gillis has tried to step up. But I've had Jordan on my podcast a couple times. He's first one to tell you, I'm not a prime shooter. He looks to distribute. He looks to set something else up. I think he's got a pretty good shot, but that just is not his deal. And Dylan wasn't Dylan. Dylan had a new baby last year. No matter how much we want to act like you can just insulate yourself from life, I'm a father of two. The first one, you think the first 6 weeks of life with a child, for anyone that hasn't experienced it, you don't think life's ever going to feel anything near normal again. You're not sleeping. And I don't know when the baby came, but again, the first year of life with your kid, it just affects sleep patterns. It affects schedule. It affects how you feel. You're a zombie some days, so I think Dylan went through a little bit of that. And again, Dylan dealt with injuries. I know for a fact Dylan dealt with injuries we weren't talking about. And I think it affected his pipe to pipe movement. And you know how he likes to step out and be big in the top part of the crease. Every analyst on any game he plays talks about that. I'm not sure he felt the same way doing that he did because he was dealing with a leg injury, There are just a lot of things. What you brought it up, it's kind of funny. I mean, the ultimate bummer about it. Now, look, anytime you make trades and you get a championship, I think you got to say it worked, right? You got to say it worked. And the Mammoth acquired Tyson Gibson. He chipped in on that championship run, and you got to win. You got to hoist the trophy. But ultimately, the way all things spun out, you could have had that top pick. You could have had, I'm forgetting the young kid out of Duke's name that plays for the Outlaws, Brenton.
Oh, Brendan O'Neill?
Yeah, Brendan O'Neill. I almost said Brenton Doyle. He's a Rockies outfielder. I apologize to everybody. Brendan O'Neill, man. Guy looks like he's got the physical build to play in this league, right? We hear all the time how field players don't always translate, but this kid looks like he can handle the physicality. And so, that was another one where you're just like, golly, it just isn't our year. But as you mentioned, getting Will Malcolm makes up for some of that.
So they brought in some new pieces for this year with the likes of Damon Edwards, who comes over as a UFA from the New York/Ottawa, whatever you want to call it. And then TJ Comizio is an in-season trade addition. So how have these two kind of fared since joining this group, not in terms of just on the field, but the leadership in the room for the back end that kind of traded away Paul Dawson, like you already mentioned, and then Joey Capito, who went to Georgia in the free agency?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I got my killer attack pug in the background barking at God knows what, if you guys are picking that up. But it's been interesting. Damon Edwards I think he's been good for the team. He has been good in transition. If you saw the game the other night, Ryan Lee did not like getting body slammed to the turf, and ultimately it was Damon Edwards that came off the bench and got a big penalty, but he was not going to have them messing with his guy. And so, that's one where I think that's a little bit of that veteran leadership that you're talking about. Has he been big as far as the stat sheet? Not always, but I always notice Damon Edwards out there. I know he gets after loose balls. Again, I think he's been a key cog in transition. I think he's been good at jumping out on wings and playing defense. You got to understand, when it comes to voices in the room, it's always going to be Dylan Ward and Robert Hope. Nobody's going to be louder than those voices, and Dylan in particular. Hope is the captain, but I know Dylan is not afraid to say anything to anybody. The guy's won the World Cup with Team Canada. He's won a championship outdoor, indoor. I think he's won a mentor. Like, if there's a trophy, he's got it on his wall. So I don't know that they've had to lean on Edwards for that so much. But I think Damon's play, Damon Edwards, I should say, his play I think it spoke for itself on the field, right? Now, TJ Comizio, I haven't even had a chance to be around him. I don't want to, I'd love to give you an answer, but I can't even fake it because, um, now I did see he was guiding somebody. I was trying to remember what the situation was, but he got in there and got somebody out of the pile before they got another penalty the other day. I think, that was good to see. I talked to him last week on our podcast. I think TJ is still trying to process the trade, right? And it's been weird because you come to a team and you haven't even set foot in your home building. You haven't felt the love of your own fans. And I know these guys aren't together every day like traditional leagues are, but he said it's still an adjustment. It's flying to a new city. I haven't even seen my own building. It's a new group of guys. Who plays what role? I know he's excited about it. I know the team's excited to have him. I do think he was real key in the first win to the point where they have this championship belt they give to the player of the game, and he got it after their win against Philly a couple of weeks ago. So I think that's one we're all hoping if they can get in the playoffs, it'll really show the seeds of what you did there, right? And I don't know. Hopefully, it shows it this weekend, but I got to get around him to get a feel for his impact.
So defense is led by Robert Hope. We've mentioned his name multiple times now, but not just as a captain for the team, but he's first in loose balls for the team. He's first in cause turnovers, block shots. When you see your captain putting in that type of work and that type of performance on the field, what can it do for the rest of the group on the back end?
I just think it sets the standard. You know what I mean? And look, I know that again when you talk about the traditional Big Four leagues that guys practice every day, that's how Hope would be in practice, I'm sure. I used to hear stories about John Elway. If guys had to run sprints, he ran sprints. He never separated himself from the group. Jokic does the same thing. Pick your great athlete. I'm sure Josh Allen has got this going on out there. The bottom line is when you're a superstar, and we've all heard the famous stories about Tom Brady, even though both our cities don't want to hear the stories about Tom Brady anymore. When your superstar is willing to be one of the guys and put in the hard work, then when he tells you to do the same, nobody else can say anything back because he's out there doing it with you. He's not asking you to do anything he's not willing to do himself, and I think that's huge.
So last one in terms of the defense before we talk Dylan Ward, Warren Jeffrey. I mean, he doesn't put up the flashy numbers in and out, but he's not going to get noticed by like an average fan out there. But to me, he's one of the best lockdown defenders in this entire league. And for those of us on the East Coast that, even with the unified standings might not get to watch a ton of Mammoth games, what are we expected to see come Sunday night when he tries to D up the Bandits offense?
Yeah, he'll get your most physical player. He's the physical. He's the physicality for sure. He's a younger version, I think, of Paul Dawson. After watching Dawson play a bit last year, Paul was big, physical, got an edge to him. Not going to put up with a lot of stuff. Warren's the exact same way. We call him Moose because he's just a big physical player. He's going to get in there. He's going to be tough to move. He'll probably get a penalty or two a game, but that penalty is also, I think, in the course of sending a message and letting you know what we are and aren't putting up with this game, so to speak. But he's a great player. He's a fun player. And I just think he's kind of the big brother to the team. But whoever, he'll probably get the Great Dane, right? He'll probably get Dane Smith. I can't remember who he's matched up on in the past. But because Dane, I know, can just get in there, drop a hip, and back you down like he's posting up in basketball, Warren's job will probably be to cancel that out.
So, if I had to put one reason on the whiteboard of why Colorado is right back in the playoff hunt a year after finishing last, it would be Dylan Ward. I mean, hands down, his game, which in my honest opinion had been slipping the prior couple years, but this season he's putting up similar numbers to their title runs and their title defense the year prior, or the year after that, I should say. But it might sound like a weird question here, but the more I think about it, it kind of makes sense. And you already mentioned possible injury last year, but did this team not making the playoffs last year and going on another deep run actually benefit Ward this year because, he didn't have to go through a long playoff run. He got the extra rest coming into this season, and I think the numbers possibly are backing up that point.
Yeah, because he had, I mean, I don't think it matters now. He had a hamstring injury that bothered him for a while. And anyone that's had that knows those don't go away quick. And his job is to be, burst reactive to different spots on the floor. And I just don't know if you can move the same way. I think he did it the best that he could. And then it got to the point near the end of the year where, Tyler Carlson got in there and played a little bit. And yes, so I do think not having to try to gut it out for the team probably did help. I think he took a little extra time off before he joined the Water Dogs too in the PLL. So that helped. And again, I think you just adjust to life as a parent. Again, the first year of a kid's life, and I know it sounds like excuses to people, but I've lived it. This isn't the guy that's going to have a nanny. I don't think. There are some athletes. I'm sure Peyton Manning had a nanny when his kids were born. I don't think that that's the situation here. And you're up in the middle of the night. You're up 2, 3 times a night. You never know when things look. It was affecting Nikola Jokic. I think back in November, December, he had his first kid too. I think one of the reasons why he's been good since the All Star break or since late January is, he's finally kind of smoothed things out and got it figured out. So I think Dylan's got that figured out as well. Look, the team wasn't that good in front of him too. There's just no doubt about it. And he was having to cover too much ground. They were late on slides. They were, it just was what it was. Just wasn't a good year. And Dylan can be Superman, but only so much. And look, Dylan would give him. See, I'm a big believer as a guy that's been around this sport for 30, 40 years of my life now. 30 years. It's not make me older than I am. I don't need all the saves. I need the key saves. But then you've got to take advantage of that key save when I give it to you. You got to go down and score the goal. If I make the one save I shouldn't, let's go build the momentum. The Mammoth just could never stack any momentum plays. We talked about it all the time last year. If they were scoring goals, they would then give the goal right back. If a team went on a run, the offense never did anything to stop the run and just pause the momentum. They couldn't stop the landslides, and they're much better all around doing that this year.
So the team is currently sitting 8-7. They got 3 games left. One versus Buffalo this weekend, which is why I got you on the show. You got Saskatchewan again, and you close out versus Calgary, which honestly could be a win-in type of matchup. So how dangerous can this team be if they do get into the playoffs, even if it's on the road in a one-and-done first-round matchup?
Yeah, I'll give you an honest answer because I'm paid to have honest opinions on the radio. I don't know yet. If you'd asked me that before all these injuries, I really thought we were on a collision course for round 3, the third fight between the Buffalo Bandits and the Colorado Mammoth. That would have been my guess back in February. But I don't. Again, I don't know what's going on with Connor Kelly, and it's just for those that maybe don't understand. You're the voice of the team. I don't get to go to a practice every day. They've literally not been home in a month. I think Kelly played. I want to say Kelly played in our last game, but it was a bye week and 3 straight road games. I honestly can't remember. I know we played Calgary, and I know they had a good win, and it was right as Nick Rose made his debut for Calgary, and it was that weird thing with Rose. He just saw the Mammoth 2 weeks earlier with Toronto, so Rose played 2 of his last 3 games in Colorado. And he was set to face the Bandits again, I think. It was just a really weird life for Nick Rose. So I want to say, though, Connor Kelly played that game. And, without Kelly, without McLaughlin, without Zed, it's just asking an awful lot. And I do think they've got the firepower to get it done. I do think they have a firepower to survive the playoffs. But the defense has got to step up while the offense figures it out. You can't have – and Dylan faced like 60 some shots the other day or 50 some shots. They were down 13-5 at the half. You can't do that. I mean, they made an effort. They had a chance to get back in that thing, but that's where last week's game felt like last year, where they just couldn't get the critical goal to push the momentum over the edge. So, I'm not positive. This game against Buffalo is going to be big. I know then we've got another game at home after that. And then I think they finish with 2 on the road to close out April. I want to believe they're going to be in the playoffs. But you know how this is. It's been a wacky year. Vancouver's coming on all of a sudden. Vancouver's something we all got to wonder about now with Del Bianco there. And he had a phenomenal game. Well, I guess that was against the Bandits. I don't have to tell you guys. I saw the highlights. I'm not trying to rub any salt in the wounds. But that guy's all of a sudden a factor again, I don't know how this is going to work out. I believe Buffalo's going to be good. We'll see what Saskatchewan does. I don't know what it is. Recent history makes me have it down a little bit. I'm trying to adjust to a life where San Diego is not the factor they've been in the past, right? So the only team I'm really certain about right now is Buffalo, because I think, and I know there's a 2-game losing streak and all that you said the fan base is upset about. Look, guys get bored. It's human nature. Buffalo knows exactly what needs to happen in the playoffs. The playoff spot's locked down. I'm not getting my. They know what physicality lies ahead to raise that cup a third straight time. I'm not going to be shocked if guys are taking a little bit easy. You know what I mean? It just is. They're going to do what they have to do to make sure they're ready come playoff time, and that's mentally and physically because they've played more lacrosse than anybody at this point. Since we got back from COVID, more than anybody. So I'm not worried about you guys one lick. I don't know. We'll see who's hot as they get into the playoffs. I guess isn't Albany on a bit of a stretch too? I feel like Albany's turned it up.
Yeah, they've won 3 or 4 in a row at this point. They're still 6-9, so they need a little bit of help, but they're heating up.
Look, you know how this is. Coaches tell you all the time in any sport, but I remember Govett telling me, Bob Hamley's told me, Pat Coyle's told me, you want to peak at this time of year. I can't tell you that I think the Mammoth are peaking just yet. They've got 4 games to get that peak going with the offense. But unfortunately, because of forced personnel changes, they're trying to figure that out. So we'll see what it does.
So Bandits Mammoth in Colorado Saturday night. Last year Buffalo got the better of them both times. We've already went over past history there, but in the last 4 seasons, I mean, they're 5-5, including the playoffs, and Buffalo has only lost 21 games during that stretch. Colorado's been responsible for 24 of them. So is there anything that the Mammoth can take from prior years and apply it to Saturday to get the win and continue their march to the playoffs?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hope Dylan Ward is Dylan Ward of the championship season. And frankly, even, that second series was so wild, right? Because if I remember when the Mammoth won, everything was like a 1-goal game.
Yep.
And then each team kicked each other's ass in one game. And then we had the close game to finish it out, right? When you guys topped it off. Or maybe it was first game. I think you guys got the 1-goal win at home. Mammoth had a pretty comfortable victory there. And then you guys just throttled it up to win the cup. Dylan Ward has just got to be special. That's just all there is to it. Now, it'd be nice if the offense got going. And God, I hate to put it that way. They did finally get 12 up the other day. But again, 6 came from one guy. They've got to get some more balanced scoring. But the Mammoth just got to lock down defensively. You got to know your assignments. You got to stay home. You cannot if there's a loose ball, they got to go get the loose ball. You can't afford to have the ball hop around. You can't have a miscommunication. You got to get the ball out of your end, and you got to limit Buffalo's offensive time because we all know if Buffalo gets enough good looks at your goalie, they're going to figure it out. Now, I'll be curious. I think this is. I don't know if the Bandits feel like they have a rival, but you mentioned it right there. I got to imagine if there's a team they're sick of losing to, not that they lose a lot, but they probably don't like Colorado having that little designation against them. I know the Mammoth players feel this is a rivalry. That's one of the fun things about the unified standings. But Colorado's got to have a good defensive game, period. That's all there, because I don't know how much offense they're going to get. Matt Vince and Dylan Ward could pitch shutouts any night you show up to a barn, right? So we'll see, man. It feels, I know the guys are happy to just fly to Denver. I know that it's Ottawa and Saskatchewan are not the easiest flights to take, right? It's 2 of the harder trips I kept getting told in the NLL. So I think they're happy to just have a nice, easy flight. Although I'll warn you, we're supposed to have a big spring storm starting Thursday night. They're not sure. The baseball home opener for the Rockies is supposed to be Friday. They don't know if they're getting that in. Apparently, there's going to be so much now. It could be wet snow, so hopefully it doesn't affect too much travel. But I will warn Buffalo fans, we might get one of your special snow jobs up there in Orchard Park showing up here on Saturday. We'll see.
So I just got 2 more for you here, and I never ask a guest, any of one that I've ever had on, the score prediction, your score prediction for Saturday's game. But what kind of game are you kind of expecting on Saturday night when the 2 teams face off? Are you expecting a low showdown between Ward and Vince, or are you expecting, hey, one team's going to get the better of the other goaltender in a higher scoring affair?
I'll tell you what, I'll give it to you this way. If the Mammoth win, it'll be a 1-goal, 2-goal win. And it'll be their classic 11-9, 10-8, 10-9, something like that. If one team has a healthy victory, it'll probably be Buffalo because that's the history of the series. You know what I mean? I don't know. See, again, I don't have a feel for this game because I don't know where the mental state of the Buffalo players is right now, you know, and we don't have any inactives. We don't have any whatever. I don't know if, you know, Tavares decides I maybe I'm going to call up a kid and get him a little chance to play here. We're going to rest another guy because, again, it's about winning that cup, right? And Buffalo, I know they locked up. I'm trying to remember the email. They've already locked up a home playoff game, haven't they?
I
With the
believe
results
with
of the
Georgia
past weekend,
losing
I
on
think
Sunday,
they
they
did.
locked it up. Yeah.
I thought we got that email from the league that they've got it locked up. I'd have to go back and look, but we don't have time for that. So if you've already got a home playoff game locked up, right? We'll see what tact he takes with this. So I don't even know. Like, I'm sure Dane Smith wouldn't mind a little bit of a rest. I'm sure some of those offensive guys wouldn't mind a little bit of a rest, you know. Now look, maybe you want to put a coffin in the Mammoth's grave, or a nail in the Mammoth's coffin, I should say, and not let them get into the playoffs. So maybe Tavares says, the heck with that, we'll take some rest the next 3 weeks and puts the pedal to the metal. And if we get that, it'll be interesting. I think the Mammoth probably welcome that right now to try to get a win and get some confidence. But this is a tough one. It's a tough one. Nobody is not going to respect the 2-time and on their way to being possibly the 3-time defending champions. But I think if it goes the Mammoth's way, it'll be a tight scoring game.
So
And it'll be low scoring.
last one for you, and I always ask a strange one to kind of leave the guests wondering why the heck they even agreed to come on this show. So would you rather have hands for feet or feet for hands?
You know, I guess if I go off of our friends, the monkeys, all primates, you'd have to go hands everywhere, right? Because their feet work like hands sometimes too. Hanging off with their big finger-like toes off a branch feels like I got more options. I don't know. Never played a lot of soccer in my life. I don't think feet would do me a lot of good up here unless you're going to go be an offensive tackle and that's a big foot bone you can use to hold a guy up or whatever. That I'm not big enough for that to happen. So I guess I'll go hands for feet. Although I'm glad I don't have to make this decision.
Right? Yeah, that's probably where I would lean.
Do you have a standard answer for people?
Yeah, mine would be hands for feet, just because I don't think you could type. I don't think we could write articles here for us. I don't think it could
Might
do
do
very
a lot
much
of us
things.
some good, though, right? We could stay off social media for a bit. And
That's a
maybe
very
get
big
some inner
plus,
peace
right?
again.
Yeah, very big plus. But Andy, that's all I got for you. Thank you for joining us on the Buffalo Sports Collective. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you, where they can find the show, where they can find anything else you want to plug for the listeners?
Yeah, you know what? We actually, man, I'm trying to, Dell, God, I can't remember his last name. I can always remember Dell because of Dell Griffith in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, John Candy's character. We always have him on Del Reed. That's it, Del Reed of the Bills backers. He comes on with us a lot. So our guys love Josh Allen. So if Buffalo's in the playoffs and the Broncos are out of it, you want some out of town support, you can tune in. We're usually, you know, a lot of people around here wish Josh Allen would have been a Bronco and that they wouldn't have selected Bradley Chubb that year. So you can find us on the Altitude Sports Radio app. If you just want to tell me I suck, and I get plenty of that in game, it's Andy_Lindahl on Twitter. Go ahead and hit me up and yell at me, and I will tell you, I do the best with the names. Now, luckily, I think I know most of the Buffalo names, so we're good. But sometimes I'm going to warn everybody because I had this happen in Toronto with Host Trouser, and I think they pronounce it House Trouser, but on the dang pronunciation guide it said HOSE. In America, that's Host Trouser. So I did the best I could. If it sounds unnatural, it may be, but I'm going off of the actual pronunciation guide in the notes. So don't get mad at me, get mad at your PR people. But you guys are awesome, and I've never really had a problem with that. So Toronto hates me, though I've learned. Most of Toronto's let me know they do not care for me.
You're speaking to a guy who butchers people's names for a living, so yeah, I'm right there with you. But that's all I got. Thank you again for joining us in the BSC. Hope to talk to you down the road and continued success with the radio show and broadcasting.
Yeah, Pat, take care.
Thank you again. We'll be back Friday for our normal episode to preview Bandits versus Mammoth. We'll talk to you all then.